England, 1862. In the cathedral city of Seabourn. The cobblestones were slick with rain, reflecting the grey autumn sky like fragments of broken mirror. Market day had drawn the usual crowd to the square beneath the towering spires of St. Catherine's Cathedral, vendors calling their wares, children darting between stalls, the air thick with the smell of baked bread and wet wool. Then came the thunder, not from the sky, but from hooves striking stone, wild and desperate. The crowd scattered as a massive black stallion burst into the square, dragging the splintered remains of a carriage behind it. The beast's eyes rolled back, showing white crescents of terror, foam flecking its mouth as it careened toward the market stalls. Men shouted warnings. Women grabbed their children and fled. A vegetable cart overturned in the chaos, her cabbages rolling across the wet stones. The horse was heading straight for the river bridge, where the road narrowed dangerously over churning water. Everyone stepped back. Everyone except Pollyanna Hooper. She stood in the center of the square, a figure in severe black silk that marked her as a widow. At 22, she had already learned that survival required courage more than propriety. Her dark blonde hair was pulled back in a simple knot, her posture straight despite the threadbare state of her mourning dress. In her hands, she carried a worn leather satchel containing the account books she kept for the few shopkeepers who would hire a woman for such work. The stallion charged toward her, 1,000 pounds of muscle and panic. Pollyanna did not run. She stepped forward instead, and her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade through silk. Low and steady, firm, but without anger. She spoke to the beast as if they were alone, as if the terrified crowd and the danger meant nothing compared to the connection she was building with her words and her absolute fearlessness.
That's it.
The horse heard her. Its hooves stuttered on the stones. Its head tossed, confusion replacing some of the terror. Pollyanna moved closer, still speaking in that same calm tone, and reached for the trailing reins. Her fingers closed around wet leather, just as the stallion reared one final time. But she held on, her body swaying with the motion rather than fighting it. The beast came down. Its breathing was ragged, sides heaving, but it stood still beneath her touch. The square fell silent. From the shadows of an elegant black carriage that had stopped at the edge of the square, a man watched. Duke Victor Ashwick, recently returned to Seabourn after 7 years abroad, had witnessed the entire scene. He was a tall figure in charcoal wool and a greatcoat that spoke of London tailoring, his dark hair touched with silver at the temples, though he was barely 35. His face was all sharp angles and cold authority, the face of a man who had learned to trust no one. He had forgotten how to feel anything beyond duty and suspicion, until he saw a penniless widow step into the path of death and command it to stop. Victor descended from his carriage, his boots striking the cobblestones with quiet authority. The crowd parted for him instinctively, recognizing power even if they did not yet know his face. He had been gone so long that Seabourn had nearly forgotten what their duke looked like. He approached Pollyanna slowly, studying her as she stood with her hand on his stallion's neck, whispering something that made the great beast's ears flick forward with interest. That horse nearly killed 3 people. His voice was deep, edged with something that might have been anger or might have been awe. Yet you walked toward it. Pollyanna turned to face him. Her eyes were grey-green, clear and direct. She did not curtsy or lower her gaze, as most women did when addressing a man of obvious wealth. The horse was terrified, not vicious. There is a difference. Most people cannot see that difference when they are about to be trampled. Then most people should pay better attention. A flicker of something crossed Victor's face. Surprise, perhaps, or the ghost of amusement in a man who had not smiled in years. You know horses. I know fear. The rest follows. Victor gestured to his driver, who hurried forward to take the stallion's reins from Pollyanna's hands. The beast went calmly now. All its earlier terror subsided. Victor studied the woman before him, taking in the quality of her dress despite its age, the intelligence in her eyes, the way she held herself with dignity despite circumstances that were clearly difficult. What is your name? Pollyanna Hooper. You are widowed. I am. She did not elaborate, and something in her tone suggested she would not tolerate pity. Victor made a decision in that moment, one that would change both their lives irrevocably. He reached into his coat and withdrew a card, extending it to her. Come to Ashwick Hall tomorrow at 10. I have a proposition that may interest you. Pollyanna took the card, her fingers brushing his for just a moment. What sort of proposition? The sort that could save you from whatever desperate situation has a woman of obvious breeding keeping account books for shopkeepers. His eyes were too knowing, too sharp. I need someone who understands horses. Someone with courage and intelligence. I believe you possess both. He turned and walked back to his carriage before she could respond, leaving Pollyanna standing in the market square with his card in her hand and the whispers of the crowd rising around her like a tide. She looked down at the embossed lettering. Victor Ashwick, Duke of Seabourne. Ashwick Hall. The Iron Duke, they called him in the papers. A man whose wife had died in scandal 7 years ago, whose trust had been shattered by betrayal, who had locked himself away in foreign cities rather than face the society that had watched his humiliation. Now he had returned, and he wanted to see her tomorrow. Pollyanna walked home through the rain, her mind turning over the encounter like a puzzle she could not quite solve. The cottage she reached an hour later was small and cold, the fire long since burned to ash. She lit a candle and sat at her desk, staring at the ledger that recorded her slow descent toward ruin. Her late husband, Thomas, had been kind but foolish, gambling away his inheritance before a fever took him 8 months ago. The debts he left behind were crushing. The cottage was hers only because it had been her mother's dowry, protected by law from creditors. But without income, she would lose even that within a year. She had been keeping books for shopkeepers, tutoring the vicar's children in mathematics, taking in mending. Respectable poverty, the kind that allowed her to maintain dignity while slowly starving. The Duke's card lay on the desk beside her account book. What could he possibly want with her? Hello, everyone. Before we go further into today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. Pollyanna presented herself at Ashwick Hall precisely at 10 the next morning. The estate rose from the moors like something from a Gothic tale, all grey stone and towering windows, surrounded by grounds that stretched for miles. The gates stood open, but the drive was long enough that Pollyanna's borrowed mare was breathing hard by the time they reached the main entrance. A butler answered her knock, his expression carefully neutral as he took in her serviceable black dress and the fact that she had arrived alone, without even a maid for propriety. Mrs. Hooper to see the Duke. I was expected. Of course. Please follow me. The interior of Ashwick Hall was magnificent and cold. High ceilings, marble floors, portraits of stern ancestors lining the walls. The butler led her not to a drawing room, as she had anticipated, but through a side door and across the grounds toward the stables. The stable complex was enormous, built around a central courtyard, with buildings radiating outward like spokes on a wheel. Pollyanna could hear horses moving in their stalls, the familiar sounds of hooves on straw, the occasional whinny. Her steps quickened despite herself. Victor was waiting in the courtyard, dressed in riding clothes that somehow made him look more approachable than the formal suit he had worn yesterday. Beside him stood an older man, with iron grey hair and a steward's bearing, and a younger man in work clothes who carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who spent his life with horses. Mrs. Hooper. Victor's greeting held no warmth, but there was a tension in his gaze. This is Mr. Bradley, my estate steward, and Lucian Blackthorne, my head groom. Pollyanna nodded to both men. Bradley looked skeptical. Lucien looked curious. I will be direct, Victor said. My stable has been in decline for 7 years. The horses are magnificent animals, but they have been mismanaged, some mistreated. I need someone who can assess the situation, reorganize the management, and restore these animals to full health and training. I need a master of horse. Pollyanna's heart began to beat faster. That is traditionally a man's position. I am aware. Society will be scandalized. I stopped caring what society thought the day my wife's infidelity became front-page news in every London paper. His voice was flat, emotionless. I care about results. You calmed a horse in full panic yesterday, with nothing but your voice and your courage. I want to know if you can do the same for an entire stable. I can. The answer came without hesitation. The position comes with housing in the east wing of the hall, a generous salary, and full authority over the stables. You will report only to me. But I warn you now, Mrs. Hooper, I do not trust easily. You will be watched. You will be tested. And if I find you lacking in any way, you will be dismissed immediately. And if I find your expectations unreasonable or your methods cruel, I will leave immediately, Pollyanna replied, meeting his cold gaze without flinching. I do not work for men who mistreat animals or people. Silence fell over the courtyard. Mr. Bradley's eyebrows rose. Lucien coughed to hide what might have been a laugh. Victor's expression did not change, but something flickered in his dark eyes. Respect, perhaps, or the recognition of a worthy opponent. Then we understand each other. When can you start? Tomorrow, if you can arrange for my few belongings to be transported from Hartwell Cottage. Consider it done. Victor extended his hand, not as a gentleman to a lady, but as one professional to another. Pollyanna shook it firmly. She did not know yet that she had just stepped into a web of conspiracy that threatened the entire Ashwick estate. She did not know that Joseph Pollard, the Duke's neighbor, had been systematically undermining the estate for years, waiting for the right moment to seize control. She did not know that the stallion's panic yesterday had not been an accident, but deliberate sabotage. All she knew was that for the first time since Thomas's death, she felt something other than despair. She felt purpose. As Pollyanna moved into Ashwick Hall the next day, with a single trunk of belongings and a determination to prove herself worthy of the shocking trust Victor had placed in her. The rooms he had assigned her were in the East Wing, spacious and well-appointed, far grander than anything she had known as the wife of a minor gentleman. A bedroom with a view of the moors, a sitting room with a desk for her work, even a small dressing room. Mrs. Potter, the housekeeper, helped her settle in with brisk efficiency. "The Duke has given orders that you are to be treated as a member of the household, not a servant," Mrs. Potter said as she directed footmen carrying Pollyanna's meager possessions. "You will take your meals in the small dining room unless the Duke requests your presence at dinner. You have full access to the library and grounds. If you need anything, you are to ask me directly." "Thank you, Mrs. Potter." The older woman paused at the door, her expression softening slightly. "The Duke is a hard man, Mrs. Hooper, but he is fair. Serve him well, and you will find him generous. Betray his trust, and you will find him unforgiving." "I have no intention of betraying anyone's trust." "Good. Because between you and me, this estate needs someone who actually cares about it. His Grace has been away too long, and certain people have taken advantage of his absence." Before Pollyanna could ask what she meant, Mrs. Potter was gone. That afternoon, Pollyanna conducted her first thorough inspection of the stables. What she found both impressed and horrified her. The facilities were magnificent, everything built to the highest standard. Spacious stalls with excellent ventilation, as a covered riding arena for winter training, tack rooms stocked with equipment that represented a small fortune. The horses themselves were extraordinary, bloodlines that would make any breeder weep with envy. But they were being systematically destroyed. The feed was of poor quality, bulked out with cheap grain that left the animals malnourished despite full troughs. The exercise schedules were haphazard. Some horses overworked while others languished. Worse, several animals showed signs of mistreatment, flinching from raised hands, nervous behaviors that spoke of rough handling. Lucienne Blackthorne found her in the tack room, making notes in a small leather journal. "You see it then?" It was not a question. "How long has it been like this?" "It started about 3 years ago, gradually at first. The previous master of horse, Mr. Garrett, began cutting corners on feed and supplies, said it was necessary economies, but the money he saved never seemed to make it back to the estate accounts." "Where is Mr. Garrett now?" "Gone. Dismissed by the Duke when he returned and began asking questions, but the damage was done." Pollyanna tapped her pencil against her journal. "Who supplies the feed?" "Joseph Pollard. He has the contract for grain and hay delivery to half the estates in the county." "Then we are going to need a new supplier." Lucienne's expression became troubled. "Pollard is powerful, Mrs. Hooper. He owns vast tracts of land bordering the Ashwick estate. He has the ear of half the county magistrates. Going against him would be dangerous." "More dangerous than watching these animals suffer?" A slow smile spread across Lucienne's weathered face. "The Duke chose well. You will do, Mrs. Hooper. You will do very nicely." That evening, Pollyanna requested an audience with Victor in his study. She found him behind an enormous desk covered in estate papers, the remains of a cold dinner pushed to one side. He looked tired, she thought. Tired and alone in this vast house that echoed with ghosts. "You have been here less than a day. Surely you cannot have a full report already." "I have enough to know that someone has been sabotaging your stables for years." Pollyanna set her journal on his desk. "The feed is deliberately poor quality. The care is inconsistent. Some of the horses show signs of abuse, and the finances do not add up. Whoever was skimming money from the stable operations was quite clever about it." Victor's jaw tightened as he read through her notes. Garrett. Perhaps, but he did not act alone. While your feed supplier has been delivering inferior goods while charging premium prices, Joseph Pollard. At the name, Victor's expression turned to stone. Pollard. You know him. He was my wife's lover. The words fell between them like a sword. Pollyanna sat down slowly, uninvited, in the chair across from his desk. Tell me. And because she asked without pity or judgment, because her grey-green eyes held only calm attention, Victor found himself speaking of things he had not discussed in 7 years. His wife Catherine had been beautiful, charming, and utterly faithless. Her affair with Joseph Pollard had been the talk of London society. When Victor confronted her, she had laughed in his face and told him she had only married him for his title and wealth. 3 weeks later, she died in a carriage accident while fleeing to meet Pollard for an assignation. Society had blamed Victor. The whispers suggested he had driven her to it, with his coldness, his obsession with duty over affection. The scandal had been so complete that Victor had left England entirely, spending 7 years abroad while his estate deteriorated under neglectful management. Pollard has been waiting for me to fail, Victor finished, his voice empty of emotion. Waiting for the estate to fall into such disrepair that I would be forced to sell. He wants these lands. He has always wanted them, and he will use any method to get them. Then we will not let him have them, Pollyanna said simply. Victor looked at her as if she had spoken in a foreign language. You say that as if it were simple. The solution is simple. Must execute it well and do not give him ammunition against us. The difficulty is in the execution, not the concept. You speak like a general planning a campaign. I speak like a woman who has been poor and powerless and refuses to be either again. Pollyanna stood, smoothing her skirts. I will need your permission to terminate the contract with Pollard and find alternative suppliers. I will also need a detailed accounting of every transaction involving the stables for the past 5 years. If there is evidence of fraud, we should have it documented before we move. You realize Pollard will retaliate. Let him. He does not frighten me. Victor rose from his desk and crossed to the window, staring out at the darkening grounds. Why are you doing this? You could have simply taken the position, done the minimum required, and drawn a safe salary. Instead, you are preparing for war. Pollyanna moved to stand beside him, close enough that he could catch the faint scent of lavender from her hair. My husband was ruined by a man like Pollard, a man who smiled and offered friendship while systematically destroying everything Thomas had built. By the time we discovered the truth, it was too late. Thomas died believing he was a failure, never knowing he had been deliberately sabotaged. She turned to face Victor, and for the first time, he saw real fury in those calm eyes. I will not stand by and watch another good man be destroyed by a parasite like Joseph Pollard. Not when I have the power to stop it. Something shifted in Victor's chest, a sensation he had not felt in so long he almost did not recognize it. Hope. Within a week, Pollyanna had transformed the stables. She negotiated a new supply contract with a farm cooperative 3 counties over, cutting costs by 20% while dramatically improving quality. She reorganized the work schedules, ensuring each horse received proper exercise and care. She personally retrained the stable hands, showing them how to approach nervous animals, how to recognize signs of illness, how to build trust rather than enforce obedience through fear. The horses responded to her like she was speaking their secret language. The black stallion from the market, a beast named Tempest, who had been deemed too dangerous for anything but breeding, became her personal project. Each morning before dawn, she went to his stall and simply sat with him, talking softly, letting him become accustomed to her presence without demands or expectations. On the 5th morning, Tempest lowered his great head and allowed her to stroke his nose. On the 10th morning, he followed her around the paddock like a faithful dog. By the end of the 2nd week, she was riding him through the estate grounds, his power leashed not by force, but by mutual respect and trust. Victor watched from his study window, unable to look away from the sight of the widow in black, moving in perfect harmony with the horse that had tried to kill 3 men. He found excuses to visit the stables more often, to check on progress, to review the new account books Pollyanna kept with meticulous precision, to watch her work with an animal that had defeated every trainer he had ever hired. He told himself it was simple fascination with her skill, or he was lying. The truth he would not admit was that Pollyanna Hooper had done something he had thought impossible. She had made him feel again. Admiration at first, for her courage and competence, then respect for her intelligence and integrity. And now something more dangerous, something that quickened his pulse when she entered a room and made the vast emptiness of Ashwick Hall seem suddenly, painfully obvious. He was beginning to care, and caring meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant the possibility of betrayal. Victor had sworn never to make himself vulnerable again, but Pollyanna was making it very difficult to keep that oath. The first direct attack from Joseph Pollard came 3 weeks after Pollyanna's arrival. She was in the stable yard working with a young mare when a carriage arrived, far too fine for a simple visit. Joseph Pollard descended, dressed in a waistcoat of garish crimson silk and enough gold jewelry to stock a modest shop. He was handsome in an oily way, with dark curls and a smile that never reached his eyes. So this is the famous Mrs. Hooper. He looked her up and down with insulting thoroughness. The woman who thinks she can play at being a man. Pollyanna set down her curry comb and faced him calmly. Mr. Pollard, what brings you to Ashwick Hall? Business, my dear. I have come to discuss the Duke's recent termination of our supply contract. A decision made, I understand, at your recommendation. The Duke makes his own decisions, does he? Or does he simply follow the advice of whatever woman currently shares his bed? The insult hung in the air like poison. Lucien, working nearby, took a step forward, but Pollyanna raised one hand to stop him. Her expression had not changed, but her voice dropped to a tone that could have frozen fire. Mr. Pollard, you will leave this property immediately. You have no business here, and your attempts at intimidation are transparent and pathetic. Pollard's smile widened. Brave words from a penniless widow. Tell me, Mrs. Hooper, what will you do when society learns that the Duke has installed his mistress in the family home? When the scandal becomes so great that not even Ashwick's title can protect him? Is that a threat? It is a promise. I will destroy him, just as I destroyed your pathetic husband. The admission came so casually that for a moment, Pollyanna thought she had misheard. What did you say? Pollard laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Did you think Thomas Hooper gambled away his fortune? How naive. I won it from him in games that were rigged from the start. I ruined him deliberately, systematically, because he owned a piece of land I wanted. And when he died, I bought that land from his creditors for 1/10 of its value. Rage flooded through Pollyanna, white-hot and absolute. But years of surviving on her wits had taught her control. She did not move. She did not shout. She simply looked at Joseph Pollard and let him see, for just a moment, the depth of her hatred. "You have made a grave mistake, Mr. Pollard." "Have I? What can you possibly do to me?" "I can make sure you never set foot on Ashwick land again. I can document every piece of fraud you have committed. And I can watch with satisfaction as the Duke destroys you completely. The Duke is a broken man playing at nobility. He has no power over me." "Then you do not know him very well." A voice spoke from behind them, cold and deadly as winter. "Mrs. Hooper is correct. You do not know me at all." Victor stood in the stable-yard entrance, having heard enough of the conversation to understand its full import. Mr. Bradley was with him, and 2 footmen whose size suggested they were more than decorative. Pollard's smile faltered for just a moment, before returning full force. "Ashwick, what I was just explaining to your employee, the realities of her situation. You were threatening a woman under my protection. There is a difference." Victor moved forward until he stood beside Pollyanna, a united front. "You are no longer welcome at Ashwick Hall. You will leave immediately, and if you return, you will be treated as a trespasser and handled accordingly. You cannot ban me from public roads. I can ban you from my property, and I promise you, Pollard, if you continue this campaign of sabotage and intimidation, I will use every resource at my disposal to expose your corruption. I may have been absent for 7 years, but I am still a duke. I still have connections, and I am no longer interested in avoiding scandal." For the first time, genuine uncertainty crossed Pollard's face. "You would drag yourself through the mud again? To protect what is mine, without hesitation?" The 2 men stared at each other, and Pollyanna saw the history between them, the old wound of betrayal, the simmering hatred that had festered for years. Pollard broke first. He turned toward his carriage, but paused at the door. "This is not over, Ashwick. I will have these lands, and when I do, I will take special pleasure in evicting every person who remained loyal to you." He left in a spray of gravel. Silence filled the stable yard. Then Victor turned to Pollyanna, and she saw something in his face that made her breath catch. Fury, yes, but also fear. Fear for her. "Did he hurt you?" "No. Only insulted me and threatened you." "Are you all right?" The question was asked so carefully, as if he expected her to shatter, as if she were precious. "I am fine. Angry, but fine." Pollyanna met his gaze steadily. "He admitted to ruining my husband, to deliberately destroying Thomas for a piece of land." "I heard. Then you understand why I will not rest until Joseph Pollard faces justice." Victor's hand moved, almost touching her arm, then fell away as if he had caught himself. "Pollyanna, you do not have to fight this battle. I can hire investigators. Handle this through legal channels. He made it personal when he destroyed my husband, and he made it worse when he threatened you." Her voice was fierce, passionate in a way that made Victor's carefully constructed walls tremble. "I am in this now, whether you want me to be or not." "What I want," Victor said slowly, "us is for you to be safe. Then help me make sure Pollard cannot hurt anyone ever again." Victor looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had walked into his life less than a month ago and turned everything upside down. This woman who faced down threats with her chin raised and her eyes blazing. This woman who made him want things he had sworn to never want again. "Very well. We fight together." The words felt like a vow. It breaks my heart to think that some of you are watching Pollyanna's journey right now, but have not even hit the subscribe button. We spend days crafting these emotional stories for you. Is it too much to ask for a simple click? If you leave now without subscribing, you might never find us again, and Pollyanna's story will be lost to you forever. Do not let this be our last story together. Or subscribe now if you value the work we do. The war with Joseph Pollard escalated quickly. Within days of his visit to Ashwick Hall, rumors began spreading through Seabourn society. Pollyanna was the Duke's mistress. She had seduced him to gain wealth and position. She was a fortune hunter, a schemer, possibly even a witch who used dark arts to control animals and men alike. The whispers were everywhere, in the shops where she used to keep accounts, in the church where she used to worship. Even among the estate workers, though most of them ignored such nonsense, having seen her work firsthand. Laura Bray and Tegan Gregory, two women of society who had been setting their caps at the Duke since his return, were particularly vicious. They spread stories about seeing Pollyanna entering Victor's private chambers at night, us about inappropriate behavior in the stables, about a secret engagement that was really just a man using a desperate woman for his own base needs. Pollyanna endured it with her head high and her work unchanged. But it wore on her, the constant judgment, the assumption that a woman in her position must be morally compromised. Victor was livid. He made a point of defending her publicly, shutting down gossip in his presence, making it clear that anyone who spread lies about Mrs. Hooper would find themselves unwelcome in polite society. But his defense only seemed to fuel the rumors. Why would a duke be so protective unless there was truth to the scandal? It was Mr. Bradley who uncovered the next piece of Pollard's plot. He found discrepancies in the estate's water rights. Someone had been filing legal documents claiming that certain streams running through Ashwick land were actually on Pollard's property. If the claim succeeded, it would cut off water access to several tenant farms, making their land worthless. The farmers affected included Theodore Kingsley, a good man with a large family, who had worked Ashwick land for 3 generations. Victor and Pollyanna rode out to visit Theodore's farm together, causing another wave of scandal. A duke and his female horsemaster, alone on the moors, unchaperoned. The tongues wagged. They ignored them. Theodore met them in his farmyard, worry etched deep in his weathered face. "Your Grace, Mrs. Hooper, I am glad you have come. I received another letter from Mr. Pollard's solicitor this morning. They are demanding I vacate by the end of the month, unless I agree to pay them for water access." "They have no legal right to that water," Victor said flatly. "The stream has been part of this estate for 200 years. "They have documents, Your Grace, official-looking papers with seals and signatures." "Forgeries," Pollyanna said immediately. "Mr. Pollard is very good at creating convincing lies." Theodore looked between them. "What can I do? I cannot afford solicitors to fight this in court, and if I lose access to that water, my crops will fail. My family will starve." Victor's jaw tightened. "You will not fight this alone, Theodore. I am bringing in investigators from London to examine those documents, and I am putting the full weight of the Ashwick legal resources behind every tenant on this estate. Pollard wants a war. He shall have one." As they rode back to the hall, Pollyanna was quiet, thinking. "What troubles you?" Victor asked. "Pollard is escalating. First the feed contract, then the rumors, now the water rights. Each attack is bolder than the last. He is testing to see how far he can push before you break." "I will not break." "I know, but he does not believe that. He thinks you are still the man who fled England in shame 7 years ago. He thinks he can overwhelm you with enough simultaneous crises that you will give up and sell. Victor reined in his horse, and Pollyanna did the same. They sat on the moors with the wind whipping around them, the cathedral spires of Seabourn visible in the distance. "I am not that man anymore," Victor said quietly. "What changed?" He looked at her, really looked at her, and Pollyanna felt something shift in the air between them, something dangerous and inevitable. "You did." The confession hung between them. "Victor," Pollyanna began, but she did not know how to finish. "I know this is inappropriate. I know society already judges us. But I cannot continue to pretend that you are simply an employee, Pollyanna. You have become essential to me, not just for your work with the horses, though that has been extraordinary, but for your courage, your integrity, the way you face every challenge without flinching. You make me want to be better than I have been, stronger, less afraid." Pollyanna's heart was racing. "I am a widow, with no fortune and a reputation that is currently being shredded by gossip. I am a duke with a title, substantial debt, and a history of spectacular public humiliation. I think we are well matched." Despite everything, Pollyanna laughed. "This is madness." "Yes, but it is honest madness." Victor reached across the space between their horses and took her hand. "I am not asking you to marry me. Not yet. Society would never accept it, and I will not damage your reputation further. But I am asking for permission to court you properly, quietly, so that when this war with Pollard is finished, we can decide what comes next." Pollyanna looked down at their joined hands. His was warm, strong, calloused from riding. Hers was smaller, marked by work, trembling slightly. She could say no. She could maintain appropriate distance, finish her work with the stables, and leave Ashwick Hall with her independence intact. But she did not want to. "Yes," she said simply. Victor raised her hand to his lips, and a gesture so old-fashioned and courtly that it made her breath catch. "Then we have an understanding." They rode back to the hall in comfortable silence, both aware that they had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. That night, unable to sleep, Pollyanna walked through the dark stables, checking on the horses as she often did. She found Victor there, standing in Tempest's stall, running his hand along the stallion's neck. "Could not sleep either?" she asked softly. "Too many thoughts." He turned to her, his face half in shadow. "I keep thinking about what Pollard said, about destroying you the way he destroyed your husband." "He will not." "How can you be so certain?" Pollyanna entered the stall, moving to stand beside him. Tempest shuffled softly, recognizing her scent. "Because I am not alone this time." Thomas faced his enemies alone, too proud to ask for help until it was too late. "I have you. I have Mr. Bradley and Lucian and Mrs. Potter. I have an entire estate of people who are tired of being bullied by Joseph Pollard." "You have me," Victor echoed. Then more quietly, "I have you." He reached for her, his hand cupping her face with a gentleness that contradicted his reputation for coldness. Pollyanna leaned into the touch, letting herself want this, letting herself be vulnerable in a way she had not allowed since Thomas's death. Victor kissed her. It was not a gentle kiss. It was 7 years of lorn Elliness and grief, all the walls he had built around his heart, crumbling in the face of this extraordinary woman who had walked into his life and refused to leave. Pollyanna kissed him back with equal passion, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. This is going to complicate everything. I know. Society will crucify us. Let them try. He laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. You are the most reckless woman I have ever met. And you are the most guarded man. We balance each other. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in the warm darkness of the stable, Tempest's quiet breathing the only sound. Tomorrow they would continue the fight against Pollard, as tomorrow the world would judge them. Tomorrow brought uncertainty and danger. But tonight they had each other. It was enough. The next phase of Pollard's campaign came from an unexpected direction. Lucien Blackthorne requested an urgent meeting with Pollyanna and the Duke. They found him in the tack room, his face pale, a leather satchel clutched in his hands. I have to confess something. I have been lying to you both. Victor went very still. Pollyanna simply waited, her expression calm. Lucien opened the satchel and pulled out a stack of papers. 3 years ago, Mr. Pollard bought up my family's debts. My father had borrowed heavily to expand our farm, and when the harvest failed, we could not repay. Pollard offered to forgive the debt if I would do him certain favors. What sort of favors? Victor's voice was dangerous. Well, small things at first, delaying deliveries, mixing inferior feed with the good. Nothing that would cause obvious harm, just enough to make the stables less efficient. I told myself it was harmless, that I was protecting my family. Lucien's hands shook. But then he asked me to tamper with Tempest's tack before the market day, to drug him so he would bolt and cause chaos. You sabotaged my horse. Victor's tone could have cut steel. I did, and I have hated myself for it every day since. Because what if someone had died? What if Mrs. Hooper had been trampled? Lucien looked at Pollyanna with anguish in his eyes. You saved that horse. You saved me from being a murderer. And I repaid you by continuing to spy for Pollard. Pollyanna felt cold. What have you told him? Everything. Your investigation into the finances, the water rights case, your relationship with the Duke. He met Victor's eyes. He is planning to expose you both at the Grand Seabourn Ball next month. He has forged documents suggesting Mrs. Hooper has been selling your horses and keeping the profits. He will present them publicly, arrest her for theft, and destroy both your reputations in one stroke. Victor moved so fast that Lucien barely had time to flinch before the Duke had him by the collar, slamming him against the wall. You betrayed my trust. You put Pollyanna in danger. Give me one reason why I should not have you arrested immediately. Because I am giving you every piece of evidence you need to destroy Pollard completely. Lucien did not struggle, did not fight. I have been documenting everything for 6 months. Every illegal thing he has done, every person he has threatened, every forgery he has commissioned. It is all in these papers. My testimony, documents, witness statements I have been collecting. Why? Pollyanna asked. Why betray him now? Because I am tired of being afraid. Because watching you stand up to him showed me what courage actually looks like. Lucien's voice broke. And because my daughter asked me yesterday if it was true that I worked for a bad man. She is 8 years old, and already she knows her father is a coward. I will not let that be my legacy. Victor released him, stepping back. You understand that your testimony will destroy you as well. You will be admitting to crimes. I know. But maybe some good can come from it. Maybe I can stop Pollard before he hurts anyone else." Pollyanna and Victor looked at each other. A conversation passed between them without words. Victor gave a slight nod. "Mr. Bradley," Pollyanna called. The steward appeared in the doorway, as if he had been waiting. "Yes, Mrs. Hooper." "Take Mr. Blackthorne to the study and secure his documents. We will need copies made and placed in separate locations for safety." "And his family?" Victor asked Lucien. "If Pollard realizes I have turned on him, he will go after them." Then they move into the hall, tonight, under the protection of the Ashwick name. Victor's voice was firm. "You are giving us the means to end this. I will ensure your family is safe." Lucien sagged with relief. "Thank you, Your Grace." As Bradley led him away, Pollyanna turned to Victor. "This changes everything. It gives us weapons, but it also means Pollard will escalate faster than we anticipated. If he suspects that Lucien has betrayed him, or he will move up his timetable. The ball is 3 weeks away. Then we have 3 weeks to prepare our counterattack." Pollyanna smiled, and there was steel in it. "Then let us make sure it is devastating." The following weeks were a blur of activity. Victor hired investigators from London, men who specialized in uncovering fraud. They took Lucien's documents and began building an ironclad case against Joseph Pollard. Forgery, extortion, sabotage, embezzlement. The list of crimes was staggering. Meanwhile, Pollyanna continued her work with the stables, but now with added security. 2 footmen accompanied her everywhere on the estate. Victor himself often worked alongside her, no longer bothering to hide their growing closeness. The gossip in Seabourn reached a fever pitch. Laura Bray and Tegan Gregory led the charge, as along with their allies, Jasmine Bailey and Samantha Evans, they spread increasingly outrageous stories that Pollyanna had bewitched the Duke, that she was pregnant with his child, that she was actually nobility in disguise, or a French spy, or a dozen other contradictory rumors. At a dinner hosted by Mr. Middleton, a local magistrate, Jacob Crawford and Oliver Payne, 2 of Victor's supposed friends, made jokes about the Duke's country entertainment. Victor walked out mid-course, but not before making it clear that anyone who disrespected Mrs. Hooper would answer to him directly. The social isolation would have been complete if not for a few loyal allies. Mrs. Potter proved herself a fierce defender within the household. Theodore Kingsley and several other tenant farmers made a point of publicly greeting Pollyanna with respect when she visited their properties. Even John, the blacksmith in the village, refused to shoe horses for anyone who spoke ill of the widow who saved Tempest. But the pressure was building. 1 week before the ball, Natasha, Joseph Pollard's cousin and a notorious gossip, cornered Pollyanna in the village market. "You think you have won, do you not?" Natasha hissed, her beautiful face twisted with spite. "You think the Duke's protection makes you untouchable?" Pollyanna regarded her calmly. "I think I have done nothing wrong, and have nothing to fear from liars. You will see the truth soon enough. My cousin is a powerful man. He destroys anyone who opposes him. And when he is finished with you, not even the Duke will not want what is left. Tell your cousin," Pollyanna said softly, "that I look forward to seeing him try." She left Natasha sputtering and returned to the hall to find Victor in the stables, working with a young colt that had been skittish. Pollard's cousin just threatened me in the market. Victor's jaw tightened. Are you all right? I'm fine, but I think we should assume Pollard knows we are preparing something. He is too clever not to have noticed the investigators. Then we need to be ready. If he makes his move at the ball, we need to be prepared to counter immediately. They worked late into the night, going over every detail of their plan. Mr. Bradley had prepared copies of all the evidence. The London investigators had secured testimony from 3 other people Pollard had victimized. The county magistrate, though a friend of Pollard's, could not ignore evidence of criminal activity once it was presented publicly. Everything was ready, except for Pollyanna's nerves. She found herself unable to sleep, pacing her room in the small hours of the morning. Finally, she gave up and went to the library, hoping a book would calm her mind. She found Victor already there, staring into the fire. "Great minds," she said softly. He turned, and the firelight painted shadows across his face. "I keep thinking about what could go wrong. All the ways this could backfire and destroy you instead of him." Pollyanna sat beside him on the leather sofa. "If it goes wrong, I will survive. I have survived worse." "Have you? Public disgrace, potential arrest, complete social ruin. My husband's death, poverty, thinking I had lost everything that mattered." She took his hand. "I survived all of that, and this time, I am not alone." Victor pulled her closer, and Pollyanna let herself lean against his strength. "I cannot lose you. Not when I have only just found you." "Then do not. Fight for us the way you are fighting for the estate." "I am fighting for both. You are part of this estate now. Part of my life. Part of me." He kissed her, and this time there was desperation in it, fear hidden beneath passion. Pollyanna understood. Tomorrow night could change everything. They could win and finally be free to build a life together. Or they could lose and be destroyed. But tonight, they had this moment. They fell asleep on the sofa, wrapped in each other's arms, the fire burning low as Potter found them at dawn and discreetly draped a blanket over them before shooing away the curious maids. Even she, practical and stern, had come to believe that the Duke and his widow belonged together. The Grand Seabourn Ball was the social event of the season. Held in the assembly rooms, it drew nobility and gentry from across the county. The ballroom glittered with candles, silk, jewels. An orchestra played from the gallery. Tables groaned under the weight of elaborate refreshments. Victor and Pollyanna arrived together, making no attempt to hide their connection. Pollyanna wore a gown that had belonged to Victor's mother, altered by Mrs. Potter to fit her slender frame. It was deep sapphire silk that brought out the color of her eyes, elegant and dignified. Her dark blonde hair was dressed simply but beautifully. She wore no jewelry except a small locket that had been her mother's. She looked every inch a duchess. The reaction was immediate. Whispers followed them across the floor. But Laura Bray and Tegan Gregory stared with open hostility. Mr. Middleton looked uncomfortable, caught between social obligation and his friendship with Pollard. Victor led Pollyanna to the floor for the opening dance, a waltz that required them to touch, to move as one. Pollyanna had practiced for this, but the reality of dancing with Victor in front of all of Seabourn society still made her heart race. "Breathe," he murmured as they began. "You are magnificent. I am terrified. So am I. But we do this together." They danced, and despite the hostile stares, despite the whispers, it was perfect. Victor moved with military precision, guiding her through the steps with confident grace. Pollyanna followed, and gradually she stopped thinking about the crowd and simply enjoyed the feel of his hand on her waist, the way they fit together. When the dance ended, polite applause rippled through the room. But before they could leave the floor, Joseph Pollard appeared. He was dressed in a jacket of peacock blue with enough gold embroidery to ransom a small kingdom. Behind him stood several footmen and a man in the sober dress of a magistrate's clerk. "Duke Ashwick, how delightful to see you enjoying the evening's entertainment." Pollard's smile was all teeth, though I fear I must interrupt with unpleasant business. The room fell silent. This was what everyone had been waiting for. "What business would that be, Pollard?" Victor's voice was arctic. "It has come to my attention that your master of horse has been engaged in theft. Specifically, the sale of Ashwick bloodstock without authorization, all with the profits disappearing into her own accounts." He produced a sheaf of papers, waving them dramatically. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Laura Bray smiled with vicious satisfaction. Even some of Victor's supposed allies looked shocked. Pollyanna stood perfectly still, her face calm despite the fury building in her chest. This was the moment they had prepared for. "Those are serious accusations," Victor said. "I assume you have evidence?" "Substantial evidence. Bills of sale bearing Mrs. Hooper's signature, correspondence with buyers, bank records showing deposits to an account in her name." Pollard's voice carried to every corner of the room. "I regret that I must make this public, but the law demands justice. I call upon Magistrate Winters to issue a warrant for Mrs. Hooper's arrest." The magistrate's clerk stepped forward, not looking uncomfortable. "Wait." Victor's voice cut through the growing chaos like a blade. "Before any warrants are issued, perhaps Magistrate Winters should examine the authenticity of those documents. They are authentic. I have verified them myself." "Then you have verified forgeries." Victor gestured to Mr. Bradley, who stepped forward carrying a leather portfolio. "I have here the actual stable records maintained by Mrs. Hooper and audited by independent investigators from London. Every horse sale is documented, every penny accounted for. Not a single transaction is missing or unexplained." Pollard's smile wavered slightly. "Your Grace is protecting his mistress. Understandable but illegal." "Mrs. Hooper is not my mistress. She is my master of horse, unhired to restore an operation that had been systematically sabotaged." Victor's voice grew louder, commanding. "Sabotaged by you, Pollard, through your agent, the former Master Garrett. Through inferior feed sold at premium prices. Through drugged horses and tampered equipment. Ridiculous. You have no proof. I have a full confession from Lucian Blackthorne, who you blackmailed into committing those acts. I have testimony from Theodore Kingsley regarding your fraudulent water rights claims. I have evidence from 6 other families you have victimized through similar schemes." Victor opened the portfolio, pulling out document after document. "I have proof of forgery, extortion, sabotage, and attempted murder, all witnessed, documented, and verified by independent investigators." He turned to address the entire ballroom. "And Joseph Pollard has spent years destroying anyone who stood in his way. He ruined Pollyanna Hooper's husband through rigged card games. He attempted to bankrupt my estate through systematic sabotage. He has victimized farmers, merchants, and gentry alike. Tonight, he attempted one final fraud to destroy an innocent woman and complete his theft of Ashwick lands. The room erupted in noise. Pollard's face had gone white. "You cannot prove any of this. You are a disgraced duke grasping at straws." "Then perhaps you should examine these documents, Magistrate Winters." Victor handed the portfolio to the clerk. "Everything is there. Names, dates, evidence. All of it will be filed with the county court tomorrow morning." The magistrate's clerk began reading, his expression growing more shocked with each page. Pollard made a sudden move toward the door, but Victor had anticipated this. John, the blacksmith, stood blocking the exit, arms crossed. He was joined by Theodore Kingsley and several other tenant farmers, all of whom had scores to settle with Pollard. "Going somewhere?" Victor asked mildly. Pollard spun back, his composure finally cracking. "You think this changes anything? I am wealthy. I have connections. I will tie this up in courts for years." "Perhaps. But you will do it from prison." Victor's smile was cold. "Because I am not just filing civil charges. I am pressing criminal charges. Every crime documented in those files. You will answer for all of it." "You cannot." "I can. I am a duke. I have resources you cannot imagine. And I am done being merciful." Victor turned to Pollyanna and extended his hand. She took it, and he pulled her close, right there in front of all of Seabourn society. "But more than that, I am a man in love with an extraordinary woman. A woman whose courage and integrity you tried to destroy because you recognized a threat when you saw one." He addressed the crowd again. "Mrs. Pollyanna Hooper is not my mistress. She is not a thief or a schemer. She is the woman I intend to marry, with all the honor and celebration that such a union deserves." The ballroom exploded into chaos. Laura Bray fainted. Tegan Gregory shrieked. Mr. Middleton looked like he might have an apoplexy. But Mrs. Potter, watching from the servants' gallery, smiled with satisfaction, and Theodore Kingsley started clapping. Slowly at first, then joined by John, and then by every tenant farmer in the room. The applause spread, grudging at first from some quarters, but genuine from those who had seen Pollyanna's worth. Pollyanna looked up at Victor, tears streaming down her face. "You just proposed to me in front of everyone." "I did. Was that presumptuous?" "Completely." She laughed through her tears. "But I accept anyway." Victor kissed her, right there in the middle of the ballroom, while the magistrate's clerk arrested Joseph Pollard for fraud and extortion, while society gasped and gossips scribbled notes, while an old order crumbled and a new one began. It was scandalous. It was perfect. The aftermath came quickly. Joseph Pollard was held for trial. The evidence against him was overwhelming. His assets were frozen pending criminal proceedings. His reputation, built on decades of careful manipulation, was destroyed in a single night. Lucian Blackthorne testified against him, but accepting a reduced sentence in exchange for his cooperation. His family remained at Ashwick Hall under the Duke's protection, and Lucien was eventually pardoned entirely, his courage in coming forward seen as redemption. Theodore Kingsley and the other victimized farmers received restitution from Pollard's seized assets. The water rights were restored. The false documents were destroyed. Ashwick Estate flourished. With Pollyanna's management, the stables became profitable again. Horses bred and trained at Ashwick began winning competitions across England. The estate's reputation for quality was restored. Society was slower to come around. Laura Bray and Tegan Gregory never did accept Pollyanna, but their influence waned as it became clear that the Duke was immovable in his devotion. Others, seeing which way the wind was blowing, had made their peace with the match. Mrs. Potter planned the wedding with military precision. 6 months after the grand Seabourn ball, Pollyanna Hooper became Pollyanna Ashwick, Duchess of Seabourn, in a ceremony held at St. Catherine's Cathedral. The entire city turned out to watch. Some came out of genuine affection. Some came out of curiosity. All of them witnessed the untouchable Duke, the man who had sworn never to love again, look at his bride as if she were the answer to every question he had ever asked. The wedding breakfast was held at Ashwick Hall, which had been transformed by flowers and joy. Tenants and nobility mingled. Mr. Bradley gave a toast so sentimental that he had to stop halfway through. Mrs. Potter cried into her apron. Lucien's daughter presented the new Duchess with a bouquet she had picked herself. As the sun set, as Victor and Pollyanna slipped away from the celebration, they walked to the stables, to Tempest's stall, where it had all truly begun. The great black stallion nickered softly, recognizing them both. "Do you remember the first time we stood here?" Victor asked, his arm around Pollyanna's waist. "I remember thinking you were the coldest man I had ever met." "I was. You thawed me. You were never cold, just afraid." Pollyanna leaned her head against his shoulder. "We both were. Not anymore." "No, not anymore." They stood in comfortable silence, watching Tempest settle for the night. Outside, the celebration continued. Tomorrow, they would begin their honeymoon, riding through the countryside they both loved. After that, a lifetime of running the estate together, making it stronger, protecting those who depended on them, was a lifetime of partnership, a lifetime of love. "Pollyanna, yes? Thank you for stepping into the path of my runaway horse." She laughed, the sound rich and free. "Thank you for recognizing that I did not do it for you." "Why did you do it?" "Because the horse needed help, and I have never been able to walk away from something that needed saving." Victor turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her face. "You saved more than a horse that day. You saved me." "We saved each other." He kissed her, slow and deep, and Pollyanna wrapped her arms around the man who had been untouchable, who had trusted no one, until a penniless widow showed him that love was not a weakness, but the greatest strength of all. In his stall, Tempest waffled softly, content. The beast had been tamed. So had the Duke. And the widow who accomplished both was at last, at exactly where she belonged. Before we end this story, if Pollyanna and Victor's journey moved you, if you found yourself holding your breath during the ballroom confrontation, if you felt the triumph when love finally won, then please share this video with someone who believes in second chances and the courage to fight for what matters. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story of passion, justice, and love that refuses to be denied. Your support helps us continue creating these tales that remind us all why hope is worth holding on to. Thank you for joining us in the mist-shrouded cathedral city of Seabourn. It has been our privilege to share the story of Duke Victor Ashwick and Pollyanna Hooper, as two wounded souls who found healing in each other and strength in standing together against those who would destroy them. Their story reminds us that trust, once broken, can be rebuilt. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. That love, real love, does not make us weak, but gives us the strength to face whatever comes. We are already preparing our next tale of romance, mystery, and the indomitable human spirit. Stories of people who refuse to give up, who fight for what they believe in, who find love in the most unexpected places. Make sure your notifications are turned on, so you do not miss a single moment. We will see you in the next story, where hearts will race, tears will fall, and love will conquer all. Thank you for watching Duke's Royal Library. Thank you for believing in stories that matter. Stay inspired, stay courageous, and remember, the greatest love stories are always worth fighting for. Until next time, thank you.